Hi, I'm Nancy Adams, Deputy Mayor of Maplewood, New Jersey. Welcome to this video on clean, green, and profitable landscape maintenance technology.
We're going to try to keep this low-key, but I did want to welcome everyone to what I think is an important workshop. So what you'll hear about today is how gas-powered commercial equipment for lawn maintenance is affecting our health, our environment, and our quality of life. What you will also hear, hopefully, is how transitioning to electric will help all those things, and if you're a landscaper, it will also grow your business.
Well, thank you all very much for coming. I actually used to work in healthcare, and so I bring a healthcare lens to this. I became very concerned in the village that I live in about the smell of gas fumes and the constant noise that was pervading our little village. Starting about 5 years ago. A lot of it was just uncoordinated landscape maintenance activities going on for hours at a time, and when you work at home or have young children, elderly grandparents trying to rest or enjoy their lives, it became very, very difficult. So we started in 2013, and we weren't just interested in the problem and complaining about this. We were very interested in finding solutions, and that's really why we're here today. We're interested in informing communities in New Jersey, seeing if we can really start to work together to get something going regionally across various towns. And what we've done in this program is bring together experts who can talk about the health issues. I'll talk a bit about the environmental issues, but then we have some businesses, communities that are taking positive approaches and helping to solve this problem and transition this industry away from fossil fuels to new technologies. Andrew? Nancy already thanked our sponsors, but thank you again. We work with local groups and with other team members. We have here today not only Quiet Communities, but the American Green Zone Alliance all the way from California. You'll meet Dan Nabe in just a little while. They've been doing great things, on-the-ground solutions in West Coast communities with Quiet Communities and other citizens groups. We're starting to bring this program here to the eastern United States as well. And then, of course, the township has really taken a lead in trying to get something going within Maplewood and more broadly in the New Jersey area. We're a 501c3, a nonprofit organization formed in 2013. We do education, outreach, and on-the-ground solutions with organizations like the American Green Zone Alliance or AGZA. We have 4 advisory councils, a health advisory council. Dr. Weinstein will be talking as one of our health advisors. A number of other people. We have a legal advisory council. We are forming a business group and have also a group of communities that now numbers 15 or 16 that are very, very interested in this topic and in finding positive solutions. We also do research. We've done some research with EPA, Harvard School of Public Health, and reaching out to do research with other groups. We do education and outreach programs like today's, expert testimony for communities, often looking for regulations to enforce or to enact and restrict leaf blower use mainly. This turns out we're going to be talking about all fossil fuel equipment today, but leaf blowers has really been one of the most egregious because of the noise and the way they're used. And then lastly, the on-the-ground solutions that I mentioned earlier. Okay, so I'm going to give an overview of some of the topics. Our experts are going to go into more depth about this, but this picture here, this is something that communities all over the country are seeing. Lots of gas-powered equipment, and gas-powered dominates this industry. There's been very little penetration of electric equipment to date. So you're seeing, dust, all sorts of pollution, a lot of noise, and everything we once did manually is now done with a piece of gas-powered equipment for the most part, whether it's edgers, trimmers, cutters, leaf blowers, industrial mowers. There's a lot of gas equipment around. The problem we'll go into is that it's pollution and noise, and there's some other problems too, toxic waste issues as well, but millions of tons of toxic pollution every year, as well as carbon dioxide. And the problem is that this is close proximity pollution. It's not smokestacks that are putting out pollution up here in the atmosphere and it gets diluted. It is very close to the ground where we live our lives, where our children play, and so forth. And what we're going to focus on is the promise of battery-powered electric technology, mainly lithium battery, that is now practical and can power a lot of the commercial grade equipment today and is only getting better. So there's two types of engines in use today in commercial lawn equipment. Two-stroke engines which power the handheld equipment. They have no pollution controls to speak of, very, very polluting, and noisy because there's very little insulation against the type of noise that's produced. Gas combustion engines, there's a series of explosions that power these engines. The noise has a very strong low-frequency component, which is what explains its ability to travel over long distances and penetrate walls and windows. So when people are at home, they can close their windows, they can close their doors, but they're still hearing this sound very clearly. Four-stroke engines used to power today's mowers, much less polluting, still can produce quite a bit of noise. The other problem is that there's been tremendous growth of the commercial landscape industry so that today there's 121 million pieces of gas-powered lawn and garden equipment operating in the U.S. This is comes straight from EPA equipment population counts. About 80 million of this is a type of equipment that we use in our backyards and around our schools and so forth. Fuel consumption, more than 2 billion gallons of gasoline consumed every year for lawn and garden equipment, another 15% in diesel fuel. So from a greenhouse gas standpoint, there's a lot of it, not in relation to other power sources, but still considerable. The toxic exhaust, there's carbon monoxide coming out, there's something called PM2.5. That stands for fine particulate matter of 2.5 microns in diameter or less. And when I say or less, we're talking about going down to the molecular level. So for gas exhaust, those molecules are in the exhaust that's being breathed in. Nitrogen oxides, NOx, VOCs, volatile organic compounds, combine to form ground-level ozone, also harmful to health along with fine particulates. In total, about 6 to 7 million tons per year being produced by lawn and garden equipment. This is a statement from the American Lung Association talking about the threat of ozone pollution and fine particle pollution to our health. This is a video, it's become very, very popular. It's comparing head-to-head pollution from a gas-powered leaf blower to a Ford Raptor truck and then also a Fiat 500. You can find it on YouTube if you just Google leaf blower versus Raptor, you'll find this.
Conventional wisdom would suggest that the larger an engine is, the more emissions it produces. So we decided to put that to the test by comparing a 6.2-liter Ford Raptor V8 to a two-stroke 50cc leaf blower. But to keep it interesting, we also threw in a Fiat 500 and a four-stroke leaf blower. So to help sort all this out, we're here at AAA's Auto Research Center. We're going to put the Raptor, the Fiat, and both leaf blowers on a lab-grade emissions dyno. Let's see what happens. testing the cars was easy. We just hooked them up to the emissions dyno, ran the FTP75, and it was all pretty straightforward. For the leaf blowers, we tested them like you'd use it, either full throttle or idle, and not a whole lot in between. So we just modified the FTP75 and substituted blower speed for vehicle speed. We had to fabricate a special adapter and put it on the leaf blower to adapt it to the emissions lab's emission equipment. Dan Evans had the privilege of actually running the test on the leaf blowers, and if you've ever heard a leaf blower outdoors, you can imagine what it sounds like indoors. Now, the emissions regulations for cars are a lot more stringent than they are for lawn equipment. Still, we were surprised by what we found. The two-stroke leaf blower is more powerful than the four-stroke one, but it's also the dirtiest. And it's the dirtiest thing we tested yet. The 6.2-liter V8 powered Raptor was overall cleaner than the 1.4-liter Fiat 500. The Raptor was actually cleaning the air of hydrocarbons during part of its test. What I mean by that is the lab measures the hydrocarbons in ambient air, the air that we breathe all the time. It also measures the hydrocarbons of what's coming out the tailpipe. And the Raptor's hydrocarbons were actually lower coming out the tailpipe than going into the engine. Who would have guessed that? So bottom line, if you really want to go green, you can use a rake, or you can blow leaves with your Ford Raptor.
The fellow who's the narrator of that video, his name is Jason from Edmunds.com, the automobile analyst. There's a press release, and he translates those findings and says a half hour of running the two-stroke leaf blower emits the same amount of hydrocarbons as driving the Ford Raptor from Texas to Alaska, 3,900 miles. So it really shows you that, because cars are so highly regulated, these machines have not. That differential becomes very, 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 very large. Something that we haven't talked about, but that's also a source of pollution, is everything that comes off the ground when you're directing the 150 mile an hour or more leaf blower air jets inches from the ground. And depending on where the blowers are being used, you can get all kinds of stuff coming into the air that is better left on the ground from pesticides, herbicides, fertilizers, and so forth, to trace metals that come from fuels and so forth. So not things that we want to be breathing in. Now, as far as the noise, 85 decibels over an 8-hour day is the safety threshold defined by the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. This slide is part of the hearing conservation training materials that's offered by what's now known as the National Association of Land Care Professionals. It used to be known as Planet Professional Land Care Network. This comes directly from that slide set, and basically what it's saying, how much of our equipment exceeds that 85 decibel level. And you'll see right underneath, yes, most of it, and some up to 1,000 times louder. So when you say, how can this be, it really has to do with the decibel and what it's measuring in sound energy. It's a logarithmic scale, so a 10-point difference is a 10-fold difference in sound. A 20-point difference is 10 times 10 difference, or a 100-fold difference, and similarly a 30-point difference would be a 1,000-fold difference in sound energy. The noise levels that have been defined as safe for the public are much, much lower. You'll see 70 decibel daily average. That's exceeded when you run blowers at 90, 95 decibels for a couple of hours. It's much lower in settings like schools, daycare centers, retirement facilities, where they're looking at 35 to 55 decibels to prevent not just hearing loss, but other non-auditory and stress-related effects that can range from psychological productivity problems all the way to elevated blood pressure and subsequent heart disease. This is a infographic that was put out by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention quite recently. You'll see kind of at 11 o'clock there, 90 decibels for a blower. That's actually pretty low. The commercial blowers, at least at the ears of the operators, are closer to 100 decibels. But what it says there, if you can read the leaf blowers, that 2 hours of running the leaf blower at 90 decibels can cause hearing damage. And as you go around the clock, to the right there, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, I don't know if you can read it, but it says, as that decibel level goes up, the amount of exposure required to be safe goes down dramatically. And again, this is because of the logarithmic nature of the decibel scale. So who's at greatest risk? There is within our general population certain populations that are at disproportionate risk, and that includes workers. So many of you, I believe, are from municipalities. The landscape industry may work with this equipment on a daily basis. For the pollution, there's only one kind of mask that we've come across that will deal with fine particulate pollution. We know just from going outside and looking, a lot of workers never wear protection at all. They're breathing in this exhaust, fine particulates off the ground for hours a day, days per week during the working season. Older people with chronic conditions, other people, younger people with chronic conditions, asthma, heart disease are a particular risk from pollution, and even hearing problems, and certainly young children that spend a good deal of time closer to the ground, playing outside. I know the healthcare panel is going to talk more about this at length. And then quickly, we're focusing on health, but there's definitely some other impacts associated with the use of this machinery. Fuel spillage, just by refilling lawnmowers during the months of use, more than 17 million gallons of fuel are being spilled into the ground. That's a figure from the 1990s from EPA. Given the growth in machinery, it's probably a lot more, especially when you include all the handheld equipment that's available today. Toxic waste, all of the degreasers, lubricants, gunky parts, filters, belts, and so forth, these are things that go into our landfills. Chemical residues can end up in our water sources. And then there's ecosystem damage from mechanical injury, as well as chemicals and noise. The types of noise that are put out by the equipment can disrupt animal communications, ability of them to reproduce and maintain biodiversity. So we're really talking about something that needs to be framed as a public health problem and an environmental problem, not just as an annoyance. Okay, and now to the positive part. There are solutions, and there's many of them. Andrew, you can just kind of scroll through them. They range from mulching leaves in place, not having to blow them necessarily, sustainable landscaping, manual tools, animals to mow the lawn. But what we're going to concentrate today on is battery-powered commercial electric equipment that from a practical standpoint can really take care of a lot of problems. Not all of them, but a lot. Just as a summary, I'm not going to go into this because you're going to hear a lot about this. Electric, lithium battery-powered machinery, zero emissions at point of use. So you're getting rid of all those exhaust emissions. 40 to 70% less noise. I have 50% up as an average. And if you recall what I said about that low frequency sound that comes from internal combustion engines, gas-powered engines, you don't have that with electric. So even if the sound starts loud, over distance, it tends to drop off very dramatically. It's a different quality of sound. And then the fuel spillage problem is gone. There's no fuel cost, and this factors in very strongly into the return on investment, cost effectiveness of this equipment, and it requires much less maintenance. Benefits, improved worker health, public health, environmental benefits, and a different business model where run properly, this can generate substantial economic savings over time. There's other special advantages for businesses. Because these machines are much quieter, you can start earlier in the morning, run them later in the day without disturbing residents. This is something that's very different from what's going on today in communities. So there's greater scheduling flexibility in areas that are not in compliance with pollution regulations. You can run these machines on ozone alert days as well. So there's potential to make more money and be more profitable. And then there's a lot of activity going on. You're going to hear about a lot of this today. There are over 120 companies now operating in the United States using at least partly electric equipment. Some are using entirely electric and manual tools. More and more university campuses are deciding to go electric on their campuses with both handheld tools and mowers because of all of the reasons we've talked about. And then municipalities, again, you're going to hear today, we're starting to see this on the East Coast. On the West Coast, there are many more that have decided to take action and start to go electric. And finally, this is why we're here. We're really hoping that we can work collaboratively and cooperatively to make something very positive happen that will benefit our health and environment and our businesses.